research and engineering studio on AWS. I know that in the last few months, while I haven't been looking, you guys have done a lot of work under the hood mainly.
Yeah.
And that's going to make probably the system administrators really happy. Matt Vaughn, welcome back to Tech Shorts.
It's good to be back.
So, research and engineering studio on AWS, right? If people haven't heard of that, we call it RES for short, so we don't go crazy. Now, it's our portal product for researchers and engineers to use to get access to all of the goodness and stuff.
That's right.
Inside the cloud. Now, why, I guess today, kind of want to cover a couple of areas. Kind of want to get into why we built that thing.
Yep.
Bit of the philosophy behind it. We've got a bit more time, so we should talk about that. But also, I know that in the last few months, while I haven't been looking, you guys have done a lot of work under the hood mainly.
Yeah.
And that's going to make probably the system administrators really happy. So we should talk about a fair bit of that to give folks an understanding of what's been going on. So why don't we start with why RES? Why did we build it?
A lot of our HPC customers, and surprisingly non-HPC customers, need interactive, really highly responsive interactive desktop environments that connect to a broader research environment, and that can be a research environment that's defined by kind of sophisticated identity management, corporate Active Directory, or something like that. But then also some pretty complicated file system type resources, some sophisticated IAM policies in the cloud, all sorts of things that go into making a research environment, and also, of course, HPC clusters.
Yeah.
But the key thing is that when you're using these desktop environments, the consistency is king. Like, if you've been doing all this work on the cluster, you don't want to go log into your desktop environment and find out that you can't access the files that you were just working on.
Right.
And if you're collaborating with somebody, you want to be, you don't want to spend time, going and chmodding, or you don't want to spend time setting up a Zoom call so that you can share your desktop screen, et cetera, et cetera. With RES, you just get that additional human in the loop value add on top of kind of the foundational research infrastructure.
And it's nice and easy, right? I guess the point of this
it's for the end users. You go to a portal, you launch a desktop, and you basically when you launch that desktop, you pick what project it launches in. That circumscribes what software environments you have access to, what instance types you have access to, what cloud policies are attached to that session, like what cloud capabilities you have. But you don't have to worry about any of that as an end user. It can be as simple if your administrator sets it up this way. It can be as simple as you go in, you click button, you get desktop.
Yep.
And then when your desktop is up, it feels like a thin. It's not a thin client. This is not Sun. This is not Sun 1999.
Well, but it feels like. It's using DCV, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I very frequently describe DCV as just like being in the data center next to the supercomputer without the air conditioning blowing up your leg, right? It's that good.
It is very fast, very responsive.
Right. DCV's got a whole lot of really good latency hiding tricks to make the the laggy internet link between the two of you kind of invisible. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, hats off, by the way, to the very nice DCV people in Italy who do an amazing job with that.
It's an amazing product. We would not have RES without it.
So RES has got like DCV built in to give you a nice seamless desktop console on an actual running machine in EC2. Could be a Windows box, could be a Linux box of any number of varieties. You've got access to all of the files that you need access to, and no more and no less. The file systems that you need access to, it's all laid out.
That's right.
So what have we done? So I'm guessing, customers, the end user customer, the researcher or the engineer is probably not going to see a lot of change in some of the stuff we've done recently. Okay, no, a lot of the stuff we've done is under the hood.
Yeah.
What have we done under the hood?
So as you can imagine, because Res is a application that runs in a customer account, there's a lot of sophistication to how it's deployed. It's a pretty complex piece of portal software, because it covers a lot of concerns. And we learned from the very successful Res, from multiple really successful Res deployments, that there were some things that we could do to make it better. Let me talk about.
And probably from some not successful Res deployments as well.
There are no unsuccessful Res deployments. No, but seriously.
It's good. It's good to learn from experience, right? So that we can feed it back in and iterate the product. So
yeah. So let's see what. Okay, I think it might be. It might be an overstatement to say that everything that we've done that's significant over the last year is entirely under the hood. So let me enumerate a few things that we've done to make the operators' lives easier, and usually by extension, the end users' lives easier and more empowered often at the same time. So first of all, we added the ability to assign a project owner role. And when we first released Res, there were basically two kinds of roles. There were end users who could go in, click button, get desktop, and then there was the super user that administered the entire thing.
Right.
And that quickly got annoying because you would want to put somebody that you trusted as an operator in charge of saying you're allowed to be in this project. You're allowed to, basically a project owner. So we implemented project owner roles, and that lets operators delegate access and some of the management of Res, but not all,
right,
to people that they trust. Super straightforward, but that's something that we added.
Yeah.
The other thing that we added was really fine-grained control over what types of actions end users could do in their desktop environments. And this is important for what are called trusted research environments. So a lot of times when you're setting up a TRE, you need to be able to control data and data exfiltration, and that can mean turning off screenshots. That can mean turning off file uploads. That can mean turning off the ability to share a desktop with somebody.
So we're talking like really secure environments and probably really regulated environments.
Very regulated, yep.
Where you might be dealing with, say, patient PII, and you absolutely want to make sure that nobody can do screenshots of that. And
patient PII. Yep, absolutely. Patient PII, ITAR environments, so export control environments.
Yeah.
Various other regulatory frameworks. Basically, almost any capability in a Res desktop environment can be turned off by the administrator. And that also includes the access to SSH access to the running instance,
right.
Access to the global file browser, plus desktop level controls, and it's all under one single area of desktop environment permissions. So even if it covers different levels of concern, that's all in one place in the Res administrative console.
Cool.
Yep, it's it all seems subtle, but just having it all put together, super useful.
Cool.
Next thing, mountable S3 file systems. So S3 is not a POSIX S3 is not a POSIX store. We usually insist on, treating it like it is.
Yeah.
We create things that look like directories there.
That POSIX schematic is never going to go away. I bet
Never.
if we come back in 10,000 years, people are still going to be putting files in folders.
There's probably going to be people like underground worshipping a gigantic stone tablet with POSIX spec on it. Little Planet of the Apes reference. It won't be a nuclear ICBM. It will actually just be the POSIX spec underground. And they'll all be extremely pedantic. But what we added to Res was mountable S3 file systems. So basically, your individual projects in Res can have, so first of all, projects in Res can have their own file systems. And they automatically get mounted on the desktops that are launched under that project. and that can be EFS file systems or FSX Lustre file systems. And what we added was S3. And basically, you can create or import a bucket or onboard a bucket, and say that this automatically gets mounted using Fuse at slash or C colon blah. And that's really, really good because, it's common to do Fuse mounts on desktops.
Yep.
Lots of people asked for it. It's a super simple way to get data into or out of your environment that doesn't require some specialized file system. So we decided, why not support that in Res? So we did.
And lots of people have got things like CyberDuck or Mountain Duck on their desktop. Right. They just love being able to use that stuff to talk to S3 because they've been doing it for years.
That's right.
You let them have that workflow that keeps continuing, but Res now gives them an interface into it as well.
That's right.
So it's all symmetric. This makes sense.
Managed by Res.
Just make it easy for people to do stuff.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Make it easy for people to do stuff and try to make the operators' lives easy at the same time.
Yeah.
So now we'll start to get a little bit deeper under the hood. We enabled hibernation on all the instance types that support it at EC2. And this is basically, now, not all instance types modulo operating systems in EC2 support this, but if it does, then in Res, you can hibernate your desktop. And that's basically, you can put it to sleep. And what that means is, it goes to sleep, the instance actually goes away, but the memory gets written out. The active working RAM gets written out, and when you bring it back up, all your processors are still running, the contents of memory are all the same. It's literally like sleeping your laptop, bringing it back.
So your EBS is still there, but the memory is still there.
File system mounts. Your IP address is still there, although that doesn't really matter for Res. But yeah, it's basically, it's the functional equivalent of sleeping and re-waking. And this is important because, everybody wants to save money. So if you're leaving your desktop for the weekend, and you're taking Monday off, there's no reason to have your instance sitting there burning, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Without hibernation, you actually have to shut it down. It's still not entirely going away, but this is much better.
This is an awful lot like being able to close the lid on your laptop.
That's exactly.
And the laptop stops costing you anything while it's turned off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah. I think it costs like a tiny bit for the EBS storage, but it's tiny.
It's a fraction. It's a tiny fraction of the cost of an instance. Okay, so that's pretty cool. What else have we done?
Let's see. We have done and continue to do a bunch of work on the identity management story in Res. So.
See, now identity is I'm not like an authentication and identity junkie. Like a few of our principal engineers happen to be. And every time I stick my head in there and poke that bear, it scares me what comes back.
Yeah, identity is complicated, especially because a key use case for Res is that you want to be able to hook it up to your institutional directory and use it as a source of truth. Which is usually made, it's
Active
Directory or Open LDAP or Enter ID. Yeah. And the original version, original versions of Res had, I will say, a happy path, maybe naive, optimistic approach to integrating with Active Directory. We continually learn from customers' directory service integrations.
They're messy.
They're messy because this is in your organization, your identity store is a huge amount of the business logic of your organization. So it's not as though we can just say, well, you're wrong. This way of doing identity is wrong. It works for you. It works for your company. So, Res tries to support it as best as it can. One real pain point with Res was when it first came out, you basically had to get the identity story right. You kind of had to sit down and plan everything, provide, your connection credentials and have all the OUs and everything set correctly, and then it was not straightforward to fix things if that didn't go as planned.
Well, and I also remember just to do a try of, try Res out, to do a demo of Res, you needed to first build
That's
an
right.
Active Directory server inside one of our AD services.
Yep. So we've
Spin all that up. I mean, it was a huge amount of stuff to do just to kick the tires of this thing.
Yep. So we did two things on the identity management. I mean, we've done a huge amount on the identity management. We did two things. So first, you can tune and change the Active Directory LDAP parameters in your res deployment after you've stood it up, kind of at your leisure,
Nice.
if that's your definition of leisure. But what's really cool
If it is, we really need to talk.
if you're only using Linux desktops, and this is a long historical issue, we would prefer this wasn't the case. But if you're using Linux desktops and you want to demo res, you don't even have to have a directory service. You can just use the built-in Cognito pool as the identity store for your desktops.
So to turn that into English for folks who don't know what Cognito is like this identity service that we've got as, in the AWS console. And you've kind of got a nice little simple user interface in there for adding and removing users, setting their passwords,
That's right.
policies and stuff. And you can just have Res talk to that.
Yes.
That's a game changer. That's huge.
That's right. And Res sets that up for you automatically anyway. Like Res already has its own Cognito that it uses to manage the web application portion of Res.
Right.
And so what we decided was, why not make it possible to use the same username and password as in your as you use to log into the Res web application, use that to log into your desktops, your instances.
This makes it just like a no-brainer for us to be able to deploy a demo for folks.
That's right.
Just kick the tires, like easy.
That's right. And as long as the number of users that you need to support isn't huge, and as long as they're using Linux-based desktops,
Right.
if it's a small, basically if you're a small shop, the Cognito solution is probably good enough.
Well, let's face it. A lot of R&D groups are small shops. Right.
That's right.
R&D people are expensive to hire. You don't usually have tens of thousands of them, although of course some places do. But this is just a good way for a team to just give this thing a try. Anyway.
Absolutely, it absolutely is. And then finally, probably the main thing, and this is almost invisible under the hood, but you'll see it because our pace of some really interesting features that I can't talk about yet are unblocked by this. And that is, we're wrapping up a campaign to make Res a pure CDK cloud development. What is
Cloud
CDK?
development kit, cloud deployment kit, I think.
Whatever.
I don't know. I don't know what
means.
CDK stands for. It's CDK.
Yeah. Anyway, we're making Res a pure CDK application. So if you're familiar with the way that Res gets deployed now, there's an ECS task, and there's all sorts of stuff that's a legacy of how it was originally built. And it makes it hard to customize Res because it's hard to mentally reason over all of these dynamically generated CloudFormation resources. And it also has the side effect of making Res installations slower than they needed to be and harder to debug once they're deployed. So once we finish our campaign this year, we've been doing it along the way, and there's already been some great side effects. So one side effect of the work that's been done to date is Res installs and VDI launches are twice as fast as they were a few months ago.
Wow.
It's really unglamorous, but it's going to unblock some other stuff, up to and including, well, actually, I can't say, but
this means like spinning up an instance is just faster in Res now.
Spinning up an instance is faster. Spinning up an instance is faster. Building res-ready AMIs for your projects is faster, and just the general installation of Res, because Res has its own infrastructure and broker hosts, and it takes time to provision those. Right. The CDK work has made provisioning those hosts, which is the rate limiting step in a Res deployment, faster.
So all of this stuff is going to make like operators' lives easier.
Much easier.
Right. So if you're one of those folks just wanting to give Res a try, it's easier than ever. If you're the sysadmin or operator ops person for your lab, we've kind of got the tool for you to make your users' lives more pleasant.
Absolutely.
Without making your life unpleasant. It's pretty cool. How do people give this a try?
Once again, so you can just go to the res documentation and we actually point you to the res demonstration stack, or you can go to HPC recipes, go to the res subsection there,
Yep.
and there's a recipe called res demo. There's a one-click button there that will take you, it'll launch in like US East 2, but you can change the region. And that will get you up and running with a reasonably working res deployment in
Pretty quickly.
45 minutes or so.
Wow.
With you filling in just a handful of things.
That's really nice. All right. Matt, thanks for coming in and telling
course.
everybody about it. See you next time.
Yep, next time.